5 days, fabric will be here. Good. Welcome to Cosplayland, I am Alice and today I can finally carry on with my Ganyu project. I have had all these parts and pieces cut for over a week just waiting for a piece of fabric that I am missing. But it has arrived, so I'm just looking forward to just carry on, and after last video I'm just going to be using this gold to just put on top of all this craft foam and make it something super nice for my Ganyu project. I just can't wait to show you, so here it is. I started by cutting out my paper template, and I could have sped up this video on the post edition just to show you the whole process very nicely done, very quickly, but the truth is it took forever, so I just wanted to remark how particularly slow this process was. Of course, digitizing all this pattern also took some time, but you don't have to worry about that because I will make these patterns available later on when I finish the project. Once I had everything cut, I had to transfer my pattern to craft foam. And as you can see, my cats are trained to sit on paper whenever they see it on the floor. If you don't have a cat, you can use weights to keep your paper on top of the foam. And then you can use a ball pen to just trace those patterns. I actually did it a bit quicker than this. It was just difficult to get around the tripod and being on the floor trying to show you at the same time. Once all my patterns were ready, I could just get rid of the paper and I will be able to cut these parts. I am going to be using a very sharp X-Acto knife on top of my cutting board. Please, if you're going to do this, just be careful because you can cut yourself very easily. The X-Acto knife is actually quicker than using your scissors and it's more accurate. It just needs a little bit of practice and you will get very straight lines very quickly. Also remember that it is much more convenient to just cut smaller pieces instead of having to deal with the whole craft foam in one go, so make sure to move your foam as much as you need to make those perfect lines. Make sure all the corners are free and then you will have to repeat this for a million times until you have all the pieces of your cosplay. And this is a silly fabric that took forever to arrive. Don't worry, it is gold on the inside. Many of you have asked me what kind of material is this. This is a two-way stretch metallic fabric. You can find it as spandex or lycra. Those are just brands of these products, but any two-way stretch fabric would work. It doesn't even need to be gold and it doesn't even need to be this color. So just find some elastic fabric that will stretch around your foam. It is easy to find in any fabric stores and it's mainly used for dancewear. Also, it is not very expensive and you won't need a lot to cover the whole thing. I bought over 2 meters thinking that I will need lots of fabric to cover it, but as my pieces are actually not that big once you put them together, I only used about half a meter. Once again, I'm going to be using my weights to keep my pattern down. And then I'm just going to roughly cut around the shape, leaving enough space to turn those edges. In order to save some fabric, I actually put all my patterns down in one go to make sure I was putting them in a position in which I wouldn't waste a lot. It may take some time to find the correct position, but don't worry, if you have Amelina, she will help you out with the process. Yeah, really. The best way to cut these pieces is to just leave a lot of extra space around it and don't be worrying about those corners because those will be cut later on. So just get a big piece that will cover the whole foam and that should be enough. Using a normal pen, I'm just going to trace once more my pattern just to make sure I'm covering the whole area that I need to glue with the glue. It doesn't need to be perfect because this is just going to be a guide and it may move later on. And now for the big reveal. I'm using double-sided tape. If you saw my last video, you will know that this proved to be the best method to cover big pieces of foam with elastic fabric. Double-sided tape is very cheap, easy to find, and it is also very not messy, which is what I was looking for. Of course, you can use other products like fabric glue or universal glue, but those are going to make a mess that probably are going to end up staining your fabric eventually, so this was a much nicer and toxic-free way of doing this part. Using this tape, I was able to cover very large pieces of fabric without having to worry about my glue just getting dry. Once everything was covered, I was able to just take the cover one piece at a time and just glue the foam pieces to my fabric. Take your time to position your pieces correctly, but don't worry because if you get it wrong, you can always unstick it. Now you just need to trim the excess fabric, just scooting around the edges, leaving a few millimeters so you can turn your fabric. Don't forget to cut the inner parts too. Now that we have it all trimmed, you need to pay special attention to all those curves and corners. Those won't do very well if you just try to force them into shape, so what you're going to do is just add some little cuts so it's easy to turn your fabric. It will take some time, but make sure to go all around your fabric. Now you can take your time to slowly go around the whole pieces and just cover them, making all those little flaps go underneath the foam. I found that pushing the edges first before you turn them completely helped a little bit. Someone asked me how long it took me to do this whole process, and the answer is a lot. I would say that just covering the pieces on foam would have taken me like 1 to 2 hours for each big piece, but that doesn't take into account the time I spent cutting the actual foam pieces and the fabric and designing the whole thing. It took a long time, and altogether just finishing this part took me over 2 weeks from start to finish. Keep in mind that at the moment I'm lucky enough to be a full-time content creator, a poor one, but a full-time content creator, so if you're going to be doing something like this, take your time because it may take a long time. Towards the end, I got much better at covering these pieces and they ended up looking very good, so I'm really happy with the work I made even if it took such a long time. And I actually managed to do this with minimum waste and minimum mess. Once I finished all my pieces, the last thing to do was to glue them to the actual fabric. After messing it up in my first attempt, I decided to just mark slightly where my pieces would go. I'm using a pen that will erase with heat, but later on I changed to a mechanical pencil because the lines were so subtle they were very difficult to see even if you were very close. Just mark a few parts where your foam needs to sit, and instead of putting the glue on the foam, I'm just going to be putting the glue directly on the fabric a bit at a time. I am using a very strong fabric glue called Fabri-Tac. Double-sided tape is great for big areas, but if you need to be more precise, I found that this type of glue was much better. Sometimes I did put the glue directly on the foam, but I had to be very careful not to stain any fabric underneath because I needed to make sure it will stay on the place that I wanted. Also, I don't fully trust the resistance of the double-sided tape, and it's great for some areas, but just in case, it's a good idea to give a layer of normal glue to the back of those pieces. Finally, I overlapped a few of the foam pieces to make it more of a 3D effect. Lucky enough, this fabric glue holds it very well. And this is the final result. Yes, it took some time to make it, but it looks so nice and so clean that it was totally worth it. Also, if you noticed, I added bias tape to the edges for a nicer finish, and I have started to assemble this piece, so hopefully the whole project will be done very soon, but there's still a lot of things to do and many details, so it may still take some time. If you follow my adventures on social media, you will also know that unfortunately my 3D printer has died, so it's gonna take me a little bit of time to just finish making all those extra little pieces that Ganyu wears. If you want to see the next part of this project, make sure to like and subscribe. That helps me fight the algorithm and show these cool things to many other people. I hope you learned something new and that you had fun. See you next time. Bye! Is that the door? Finally, it has arrived!